Good afternoon and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Yes, we'll be breaking this thing down again, verse by verse, into factual logical statements in English so that we can understand who or what is Allah, what does he mean by the contents of his book, and more importantly for us as non-believers, how does this affect us in our lives today? So as I always do before I start, I'm going to tell you now to read this, buy and read and translate it yourself, an Arabic Quran, not an English one. Buy and read this first before you have questions and doubts over the things I'm about to say. And after having done so, you'll recognise 100% of what I'm going to say now is true and accurate of what Allah says in his book and what Muslims believe today. So let's get started. If you remember from the last episode, we went through the great mercy that Allah gives to his dead martyrs. Even though they're not actually martyrs, they are made martyrs despite dying outside of a battle, and that is the great mercy that Allah is going to give them. So they get grievously wounded, the battle moves on, they are left there to die alone, and after that, because they have done that and they didn't quite make it to martyrdom, Allah is going to reward them with a full martyrdom, so they can continue fighting the holy jihad beyond their death with provisions he's going to give them in what is called the Islamic purgatory. An idea stolen from Catholicism, but it's in there. If you don't believe me, buy it and read it yourself or watch the previous episode. So with that in mind, let's carry on. 176. Do not let those infidels make a grievance against you. Surely they cannot bring harm to Allah, and he will give them no luck and great torment in the hereafter. Luck will go only to his faithful Muslims. End of verse. So, an interesting start to this episode, and I think it's worth having a little bit of a deeper look into how he mentions he can give you luck or he can take it away. So he is the god of luck, if you like, in this storybook, which is really odd when you think about the previous episodes that I have done examining the mosque at the Temple of Luxor, which is an old Egyptian homosexuality temple to the previous Egyptian gods. And at the time they had a king who was supposedly a living deity, a living god, called Thoth. Thoth was a living deity of luck. He was the king of deceivers, the god of robbers and trickery, and it was he who gave or took away luck from people because he was the guy who did that. And we'll have a look on screen the temple that he has, which is the Luxor Temple. You can see in the background that it has a mosque in the current day now, despite them saying they destroyed all the old temples. Bit weird how they didn't destroy this one. Also, you'll see, I'll put up on the screen his iconography when they make statues of him. At the bottom, they have a black cube, another odd thing that Allah likes to do now in the current day. And then we'll have a look at how Thoth looks himself, and how upon his head you will find a star and a crescent, which is again what Islam uses today. So if I didn't know better, Allah, I would say that you have copied all that stuff from Thoth, and the temple at Luxor, the old homosexuality rape temple, which is now a mosque, is in fact your ancestral home. And that is why, if we break this down, he's saying, do not let these infidels make a grievance against you. Surely they cannot bring harm to Allah, and he will give them no luck and great torment. But you will get luck, O faithful Muslims, as in, I can give you or take away that luck, says Allah in his book, because I am synonymous with Thoth from the Egyptian Luxor Temple of homosexuality, who is in fact a rebirth of the Egyptian god Set, who we know today as Satan, who does those things as well. That's what this means, I think. And we carry on. 177. Surely those who trade Islam for false religions, the infidels, can never threaten Allah. Luck will not be theirs, but a grievous, painful torment shall be their reward. End of verse. So if we break this down, again we're going into the rewarding or the apportioning of luck from Allah. And what he's saying here is, surely those who trade Islam for false religions. So if you don't follow this, the current day version, not Thoth, not Set, not anything Egyptian that we were supposed to be getting rid of, but you can go to the Luxor Temple Mosque and you can worship there as long as you call him Allah and you worship the black cube, you know, the one that Thoth was previously sat upon, or the statue that was previously Thoth, which is now Allah. As long as you worship those, you'll get really good luck, and if you don't, You won't get any luck. You'll get a grievous, painful torment, and that shall be your reward. Presumably burning in the hereafter, once the Muslims have finished the end times genocide or prophecy, killed everyone else and created paradise with their blood, and then decorated the walls with the skulls of the dead, because that is how it's described in the Quran of the Muslims in the Book of Allah. Let's carry on. 178. Do not think we increase their lives... Oh, he's talking about the non-believers here, the infidels. Do not think we increase their lives and wealth for a good which is theirs. Allah increases their lives so that they can find more sin and be punished more severely later on. End of verse. That's interesting, isn't it? So, I think what's happening here is Allah is well aware that his Muslims are living in poverty, stricken from the peace that he prophesied that they would have, so they're always at war. They've got no food, no money, and everyone else on the world is at war with them because they want to cut their heads off. So obviously the other people of the world are not happy with this. And over time what's happened is the other peaceful peoples of the world, namely Christians, Jews and atheists and other types of pagans and polytheists and such, they're all getting along fine over there, and because they're not at war and they're not giving all their money towards a holy jihad, as the Muslims have been doing, their money has been going into irrigation, hospitals, education, this kind of thing. Their society has grown, and such is their wealth that they are now much wealthier than Allah's Muslims. But Allah doesn't want you to think of it like this. He says, do not think we increase the lives and wealth of these infidels for a good which is theirs. So Allah, because he said all the wealth is a bounty of his and that he writes everybody's path, has to take responsibility for the wealth and the success of all the enemy nations. You know, the guys that he wants you to kill, O Muslims. So that's what he's doing here. Do not think. That's the main thing, Muslims, that Allah wants of you to just not think at all. Do not think we increase their lives and wealth, those infidels, for a good which is theirs. Oh no, Allah's only increasing their lives and making them rich and happy and peaceful so that they can find more sin, so that he can lead them back to punishment right at the end. When you kill them, O Muslims, then he'll get to punish them and you'll get your virgins. Got it? Well, I hope you do have it, because if you don't get it, you're not worshipping enough, you're not obeying Allah, you're not believing his words, and that means you are naughty and evil. And you know what Allah does to naughty, evil unbelievers? Off with your head, you're dead. Let's carry on. 179. Allah saw fit to raise the condition of the infidels beyond that of his believers, only to distinct bad and good between them. Allah chooses not to show you the unseen, but ye of his chosen messengers. So believe in they and obey only he. End of verse. I feel like this is a lot of excuses from Allah. Allah, mate, sorry to bother you, mate. Come here a minute. When you say Allah saw fit to raise the condition of the infidels, is this you admitting that your earlier prophecy that you would have no rivals and your enemies would be poor and stricken with disease and curses, is this you admitting that actually that was a bad prophecy and the opposite of that one is also true? Because a lot of your... I don't mean to be rude to you, but a lot of your prophecies turn out to be the exact opposite of what you originally said. So when you say Allah saw fit to raise the condition of the infidels beyond that of his believers, only to distinct bad and good between them, you're only doing it so that we find sin. Are you sure you're not just making excuses for that bad prophecy, like you do all the other ones? No? Okay. Thanks for clearing that up, Allah. I'll let you go back to sleep. So Allah is telling me that in fact, no, even though that's what it looks like, trust me, bro, it isn't that. Even though it looks like he's made another bad prophecy, and now he's trying to make excuses to his Muslims for the fact that all the enemies are rich and doing well, have really big lands, all their leaders are still alive, they're winning their battles, they're at peace, and they're wealthy. Even though it looks like that, it's not like that, O Muslims. The reason they're doing well and you're doing poor, even though he promised that they would be poor and you would be doing well, it's so that he can distinct between good and bad. He's just going to lead them back into hell and evil and sin and then kill them once you have already killed them. That's how he's going to catch up with them, O Muslims. Get to the holy jihad, kill all the unbelievers, otherwise you are not doing your job properly. It's not Allah's fault that none of this is happening, you understand? It's you, O Muslims. You're not faithful, you're not running into battle to martyr yourself, And because of that, Allah chooses not to show you the unseen, but instead he chooses his messengers like Muhammad. That's your fault, O Muslims. You're not worshipping enough. So then he finishes off by saying, so believe in they and obey only he, as in Allah in the book. So Muslims, know that. The reason those guys are rich is nothing to do with them. The reason you are poor is everything to do with you, not worshipping enough. And he's making them rich so that he can punish them later. So get on with your worship and then go and kill them. Okay, Muslims? That's what this means. 180. Oh, it's a darts one. 180. What's that show? Bullseye. Oh, that's got a weird little... Anyway, the logo. 180. And do not let the stingy count what Allah has given them as any kind of reward. Ye, it is an evil for them, to lead them into his ever fire on your resurrection day. To Allah is the full inheritance of heaven and earth, for Allah knows all that ye do. End of verse. That's interesting, isn't it? So if we break this down, and he does hear them, who saith, we have greater wealth, Allah and his Muslim... Oh no, we haven't got to that bit yet. Buggered it up. So 180, let's go through it again. And do not let the stingy, i.e. the guys over there who are really rich and you're not, so do not let people over here who are stingy Muslims, who are upset about those guys being rich, do not let the stingy count what Allah has given them, those guys we're going to kill, as any kind of reward. Ye, it is an evil for them, to lead them to his ever fire on your resurrection day, i.e., O Muslims, when you complete the end times genocidal prophecy and you kill all the non-believers, then is the resurrection day where you'll come back from the dead, you'll be let out of purgatory with Muhammad, and then you'll get your reward, your wealth, your virgins, and everything else. You'll get the mercy and you'll get the forgiveness that you have been promised. Just know that first of all, you've got to do all that stuff, and until that happens, those guys are going to be rich, and you've got to kill them. But it's no kind of wealth for them. It's evil. Even though they're enjoying it and they're loving it over there and you're really jealous, don't be, because they're evil and that stuff's evil and you should be worshipping me and being happy about it too, O Muslims. That's what this means. To Allah is the full inheritance of the heaven and earth. Although I thought he said he created the heaven and earth, so... Allah, mate, you come back over here, yeah? When you say to me... When you say, to Allah is the full inheritance of the heaven and earth, I thought you said you created the heaven and earth as a bounty for your Muslims. Did you create it as a bounty for your Muslims to give you back at your mosque, or is to Allah the full inheritance of the heaven and earth? Are you going to inherit it at a later date, or did you make it for them? Because you can't have your cake and also eat it. Either you've eaten it and it's in your belly, or it's in your hand and you haven't eaten it. So, which is it to be, O Allah, wise, powerful and most graceful and most merciful Allah? You can't have both, I told you that. We'll talk about this later. I'm busy. So Allah has left me with more questions than answers when I consulted him about what 180 actually means. And what he's saying here is the stuff about the evil, we've gone through that. Now we're on the bit about Allah is the full inheritance of heaven and earth. So an inheritance is something that you don't own yet, but at a later stage will take hold of and then you will own. That's why you're inheriting it. You know, it's your heritage. Someone else has got it and in future you're going to get it. So Allah is saying here, the reason why those guys are rich and you're poor, O Muslims, and you're going to get their money later is because he's going to inherit it. I think what he means is you're going to steal it and give it to him at the mosque. Once he's got it at the mosque, then he will have inherited it. For Allah knows all you do, so don't keep any of it before he gets it. I think that's exactly what he means here, although, as we know, this isn't very well written, so I had to interpret that a little tiny bit, because if we just read it to Allah is the full inheritance of heaven and earth, it completely contradicts his earlier claim that he created the bounty of heaven and earth for you, O Muslims, so you could take it back from the pockets of the Jews and Christians and give it to him at his mosque in charity. See? But Allah knows all you do, so don't have any doubts or questions and don't be keeping any of those coins. Do your worship, obey Allah, otherwise you know what will happen to you. Off with your head. And we move on. 180. And he does hear them, who saith, We have the greater wealth, Allah and his Muslims are just poor. But we remember all this, and that they killed our prophet so unjustly by a poison. We say, You will taste burning wrath and eternal torment. End of verse. Now, breaking this down, he does hear them, i.e. those guys saying how great their life is and how rich they are, and how they didn't get it off Allah. And he also hears you, O Muslims, saying how poverty-stricken and angry you are that those guys have got all the money, despite that Allah said it was for you. So he hears all that, and those who say, i.e. those guys over there, we have greater wealth than you, so Allah must be poor because his Muslims are just not living very good lives, and they're also poor. So even though Allah claims he's got all this money, he doesn't. He's just lying to his Muslims, and everyone else has got the money over there. When they say that, we, as in Allah and his angels, we remember all this, and that they killed our Prophet Muhammad. Because remember, Muhammad took some Jew women as slaves, and one of the Jew slaves poisoned him, and he lived in terrible agony for a few weeks, and then died. So it was really unjust and nasty, and they shouldn't have done that, because Allah says in his book, if you're taken as a slave, you have to then be Islamic, i.e. you have to worship, and you have to do what Allah and Muhammad are telling you to do. But that evil slave woman who killed her slave master, and then escaped back home to her family, no, she shouldn't have done that. That was evil. That's what this means. And then he finishes up by saying, when that happens, we say to you, rich Westerners over there, so that Muslims don't get jealous, you will taste burning, wrath and eternal torment. Just as soon as my Muslims can catch up to you and manage to kill you, which, as we've seen in the previous episodes, ain't been going too well for them. Probably because the Quran of the Muslims is not a fantastic strategy for a military. It's pretty bloody bad. But anyway, that's what that means. And that brings us to our final verse, 182. This is because of your obedience. He does will these odd occurrences. For if you serve Allah, doth reward his servants. And if you rejected him, your reward will only be great pain and suffering. Allah is the most just one. End of verse. End of reading. So, breaking this down, when we remember all the previous things that we went through in those verses there, the reason why those guys are rich, you're poor, the reason why Allah saw it fit to make them rich but not you, the reason why those guys are trading Islam for their false religions and getting away with it, despite that he prophesied earlier that they would not be doing that, they would not be rich, they'd have curses, disease, mind control, dead, and that hasn't happened. This is because of your obedience, O Muslim. You're not worshipping him enough, and you're not doing enough Quran stuff, so get to it, O Muslims. Go and kill those guys. That's what he's saying. This is because of your obedience. Because of your bad obedience, he does these odd occurrences. He even knows that it's looking really weird. He's calling them odd occurrences himself. For if you serve Allah, doth reward his servants. I.e., get to the killing of the Jews and Christians, O Muslims. Stop whinging about having no money and how they've got it. Go and get it off them by killing them and then bringing it back to me at the mosque, says Allah in his book. And then he finishes off by saying, if you rejected him, your reward will only be great pain and suffering. Allah is the most just one, not their Christ. That's the unsaid bit here between the lines. Their Christ who's giving them blessings, letting them live peacefully and rich and develop great technology and have allies all throughout the land and even be friends with those hateful Satan Jews that we can't stand and want to kill. That's all happening because of Allah, not Christ. Allah's the just one, not Christ. That's what this means. So in summary, this is a page of excuses. Once again, we're hearing more and more and more dodgy excuses from Allah. A, for why those guys over there are rich, even though we're supposed to be much richer than them. You know, Allah said throughout the first and second book, and actually at the part of the third book, this one, those guys would be poor, in turmoil. They'd be struck with Allah disease, curses and sickness. They would not have their own lands or leaders. They certainly wouldn't have great technology. He even sent 2 demons over there, Marut and Harut, to screw them over so that they wouldn't become great. But anyway, and he said, oh, Muslims would be rich, powerful and wealthy, and they'd be happily worshipping him. Even though none of that stuff's happened, all his prophecies have come out false. Now he's changed his story and he's saying all this is part of the plan. It's secret agent Allah. He's back once again to tell you, O Muslim, The reason all this is happening is A, because you're not worshipping him enough, and your obedience is slacking off and he's not happy about it. And B, it's all part of his secret agent plan to get those guys into more and more and more sin, because remember, everything that they do that is not in this book here is a great sin. And because they're not doing this book here, that's another great sin. So those guys living happily and peacefully over there with great wealth and technology, pretty wives and nice jobs and friends and families is all a big great sin. And the reason that is there is so that you can prove your obedience and your faith in Allah by running over there and getting martyred by killing those guys, and then the survivors who are cowards can make up for it by bringing all the wealth back and dropping it off at the mosque. That's what this means. And that's the end of this video. So I hope you enjoyed that and you learnt something. God bless. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. That was great fun, wasn't it? I really enjoyed that one. So anyway, that's all for now. Get back to me tomorrow at 7:15 for more Without Lies, Islam Dies. In the meantime, have a lovely evening. God bless you all. And I'll see you, beautiful, highly intelligent people, tomorrow. Bye now.